Good morning and welcome. On behalf of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, I'd like to thank you for joining us today for our third of 3 listening sessions on the Main Street Recovery Finance Program. For those of you whom I have not had the pleasure of meeting before, I am Elizabeth Limbrick, the Director of Brownfields and Sustainable Systems at the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. We are convened today, again, for the third of 3 focused stakeholder discussions on the New Jersey Economic Recovery Act Main Street Finance Program. In preparation for today's meeting, we have done a lot of deliberation on how to best draft the rules and program specifications to stand up this new program. We are now at a key moment where we can share our considerations and get some of your feedback on the things that either we may have missed or other things that you think are critical to the work that we are doing. This is all building on the Economic Recovery Act law. The law does not go into effect until we have the rules completed. I'm going to take you through an overview of the format and ground rules for this session, and then I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Community Development Officer, Ty Cooper, and our Managing Director, Cristina Fuentes, who will walk you through the details of the program. After the program, we want to open it up for your input. We have plenty of time available for public input. I want to make that very, very clear. We're talking about perhaps like a half hour of presentation, and then the rest of the time is open for public comment. I did want to note the program is being recorded, and the slides and the recording will be available on our website. I believe we also have live captions available as well. And in addition, for our Spanish-speaking participants, we have a staff member from NJEDA who's available through the Q&A and the chat, Alberto, and he can answer your questions if you put them in Spanish. So this program, the Main Street Recovery Finance Program, is one of several programs in that Economic Recovery Act, which was signed into law by Governor Murphy on January 7th, 2021. We are building the Main Street program rules based on the Economic Recovery Statute. And today's session is a continuation of the process that gets us to rule completion. A stronger, fairer New Jersey has been the foundation of Governor Murphy's administration, and the Economic Recovery Act creates an entire portfolio of tax incentives, financing programs, and grant programs that will build a stronger, fairer New Jersey. So the Economic Recovery Act is both a broad-based recovery bill and a reform bill that will better position New Jersey to recover from the economic crisis from COVID while remaining true to NJEDA's commitments to transparency and accountability. We have a wealth of information on our website. It's posted here, njeda.com/Economic Recovery Act, and you can learn about any of the programs in the Economic Recovery Act. And we have a convenient portal to provide general feedback. I highly encourage you to visit our website. Again, today's session is only one step of consistent points of engagement in our rulemaking and program development process. We have multiple opportunities for engagement. This is an example of that informal program-specific feedback on Main Street. So again, we're going to take a deep dive today looking at the attributes and definitions for the Main Street Recovery Finance Program. Again, under the leadership of Governor Murphy and our CEO, Tim Sullivan, we really are committed to transparency, equity, and faithful stewardship of taxpayer dollars. And we welcome your constructive input from all New Jerseyans as we work through the process of implementing the programs under this act. Again, under Governor Murphy's Executive Order 63, we really are deepening and strengthening our effort to engage with stakeholders and the community at large. We're providing multiple opportunities for groups and stakeholders to provide that meaningful input and to engage with us in crafting the rules and standing up the Main Street Recovery Program. Public feedback policy. So we will be accepting verbal input after our speakers have presented, but we want to wait till they're finished. So what we're going to ask you to do to provide your input, please use the raise hand function, which I believe you can find if you click on the, is it the participants or the chat at the bottom? The raise hand under more. So the three little dots at the bottom, if you click on that, you will see the raise hand function down there. So please use that. We're going to call on each person with their hand raised in the order that they raise their hand. We will unmute your microphone and then you can make your statement. In order to ensure that we do have time for everyone's voice to be heard, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please keep your comments to matters pertaining to the Economic Recovery Act and the Main Street program or the draft rules. Each member of the public will have one opportunity to provide comments. If we have time at the end and someone wants to provide additional comments, we're happy to provide that opportunity for additional remarks. Again, this is a chance for you to speak about the Economic Recovery Act, the Main Street Recovery Program, or the draft rules. This is a listening session and we're asking speakers to limit any responses to clarifications on that. We ask that all speakers and members of the public provide their remarks in a civil manner. And I just again wanted to reinforce that we are recording this meeting and we want you to be aware that the recording has actually begun. If you speak on the record, it's your consent that you are being recorded. And members of the public that are unable to participate live will have the opportunity to review this recording and provide comment. And with that, now it is my pleasure to introduce our Chief Community Development Officer, Ty Cooper.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and really great overview. That's a lot of information. And I would just say thank you, everybody, for joining us today. You're spending your Thursday morning with us. That's great. We're really looking forward to you sharing your input and feedback on the Main Street Recovery Finance Program. As we begin the long process of recovering from COVID-19 pandemic, the resources this program makes available to small businesses will be vital to ensuring a strong and equitable recovery. Today's listening session will help us make sure this program addresses your needs in the most effective and efficient way. You're going to continually hear this is about you. Today is to answer all of your questions. So again, take the time to listen, take the time to ask as many questions as you have. And I will just say this, Governor Murphy has been phenomenal since he took office. He's been dedicated to building a stronger, fair New Jersey economy that works for all New Jerseyans. The New Jersey Economic Recovery Act creates a new package of programs designed to keep our state moving towards this goal. In addition to this program, the ERA also includes tax credits to incentivize job creation, new construction, revitalization of brownfields and historic, which Elizabeth loves, financial resources for small businesses, support for new supermarkets and healthy food retailers in food desert communities, new funding opportunities for early stage companies in New Jersey, and support for the growing film and digital media industry. One of the governor's top priorities is supporting small businesses and main streets throughout the state. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm so proud of the work that NJEDA has done to provide hundreds of millions of dollars in relief to more than 75,000 small businesses throughout the state. This is in conjunction with other state agencies, including NJRA, DCA, and HMFA as well. Now, as we begin to recover from the worst of the pandemic, we are shifting our focus to achieving a stronger, fair recovery. The Main Street Recovery Finance Program is a key component of these recovery efforts that will provide $100 million in grants and loans to small and micro businesses. The program will also help develop pilot programs that will provide loans to other micro business lenders like CDFIs and minority deposit institutions, increasing their lending capacity to support more New Jersey micro businesses. In line with Governor Murphy and the NJEDA's commitment to transparency and public engagement, we are proud to share with you today the draft rules for the program and receive your input. As small business owners, you guys know what resources you need, you know what you're looking for, and we are really looking forward to hearing from you. We know that your input's going to be invaluable, and we're excited about the positive impacts for this program. I'm pleased to turn it over now to my colleague, Christina Fuentes, the Managing Director of Community Development. Christina.
Thank you, Ty. There we go. Okay, great. And good morning, everyone. So as stated before, I'm going to discuss the Main Street Recovery Program, which was established at the ERA and provides a $100 million appropriation to allow EDA to create a fund to then use products, essentially, that will be utilized under the fund. The products can consist of grants to small businesses, which would be defined by SBA, to support renovations, improvements, lease payments, also purchase and installation of equipment that would be incorporated under FF&E. I would also support loans to micro businesses as well too. And it would offer low cost financing to what we would define as a micro business to be 10 full-time employees or less that also make less than 1.5 million in revenue during that current year. And then it's also going to allow products for our resource partners and other eligible lenders, which would be classified in supporting loans and grants. They would have to have a 10-year experience and background of supporting micro businesses and providing resources, especially like technical assistance. And the entities that would fall under as eligible lenders would essentially be the community development financial institutions, otherwise known as CDFIs, minority depository institutions, zone development corporations in cities with a population of 100,000 or more, and community development corporations. And there's also supposed to be economic development corporations under there, but it's missing off the slide. So next slide, please. The two initial products that are going to be created are going to be two grants. The first one will be a small business lease grant, which will provide funding to support lease payments for a business that's going into new space or potentially adding new space as well. And then the second grant will be for a small business improvement grant, which will be a reimbursement to a business owner who may have taken on additional costs to make improvements into their interior or exterior space, or had to potentially make a new purchase of equipment, furniture, or fixtures as well too, and install those as well. Next slide. The small business lease grant will essentially, we'll have a 40% set aside for opportunity zone eligible census tracts. But it essentially would be a grant to support a business that's going into new space. The lease can't be executed 12 months prior to their application date in order to be eligible. And then the grant essentially would be two disbursements. First, at approval, they would receive 20% of their annual lease payments. And then 12 months later, they can receive a second grant, which again would be 20% of annual lease payments as well too. This would be limited to one application per location. There would be a $100 approval fee due at the EDA approval, and then to receive your grant agreement, and then you would have to execute your grant agreement from that point. Some eligibility requirements around this program. As per the statute, you would have to meet the SBA definition of a small business, and that's determined by your NAICS code. You would provide a current tax clearance certificate, but you also have to be in good standing with the state and Department of Labor, Department of Environmental Protection, and not be in default of any other state assistance or EDA assistance as well too. At time of application, you would certify that you're going to be understanding and going into the minimum wage requirements under the statute, and that would be essentially having to pay greater of $15 an hour or 120% of minimum wage requirements. If the business has tipped employees, then they just have to meet the requirement of 120% of minimum wage requirements. This would be for the term of the lease as well, which would be a minimum of at least 5 years. So the compliance period would be for 5 years. And you would have to commit to remaining at that space for at least the 5 years as well too. And the program's open to nonprofits and commercial businesses as well. The lease essentially would have to be 500 to 10,000 square feet of office or retail, which would encompass all commercial space. At least the 10,000 square feet is, if it's over that, 10,000 square feet, it's still eligible. It doesn't, preclude you from the program, but we're only going to incentivize up to 10,000 square feet. It would have to be a new lease, an amendment, or an extension. Under the amendments or extensions, you would have to add at least 500 square feet compared to your prior space as well too. The lease would also have to incorporate first floor street level space. If you have space above it on a second floor or a basement, that's still eligible to be included. It doesn't preclude you from the program at all either. And again, it would have to be a minimum of a 5-year lease term too. The lease also has to be a market rate lease. We want to make sure that, it has to be comparable to other listings in your area, and we wouldn't want to incentivize a landlord for overcharging their tenants. And the lease can't be executed 12 months prior to the application date as well too. Some exclusions around the program. Essentially, you cannot terminate your lease or opt out of the lease just to pursue an incentive. for the same square footage as well. So we want to make sure that this is for businesses that are going into new space or expanding their space. You would, if you are falling into the category of where you received a small business lease assistance program, and that was after March 9th of 2020, you can opt out to pursue this if you would like. If you default on your lease payments or you leave the space for some reason, you would no longer be eligible, but you would also have to repay any funding that was already provided to you. High-tech and business incubator members and nonprofit facilities would not be eligible to qualify for this incentive, but the operators of incubators would be eligible for this. And the landlord cannot have any ownership interest in the tenant as well. So the next grant would be the Small Business Improvement Grant. Again, we would have a 40% set aside for Opportunity Zone eligible census tracts. Under this grant program, we would be providing a 50%, up to 50% reimbursement, which would be a grant, and it would be up to $50,000 as well too. So we would be reimbursing project costs with a maximum award of $50,000. And that can go towards any type of interior exterior renovations, and again, purchase and installation of FF&E as well. And the minimum project cost would have to be at least $5,000. We would expect there would be one application per EIN. If this EIN has multiple locations, you can incorporate multiple locations in your application, but it's also important that the applicant would incorporate renovations and purchases of equipment as well in one application. Again, it would be an approval fee of $100 at time of approval, and in order to execute the grant agreement and receive funds. The applicant must meet the SBA definition of a small business. Again, according to their NAICS code, they would have to rent or own and operate a commercial business. They would have to be in good standing with the state, demonstrated they have a current tax clearance certificate, be in good standing with Department of Labor and Environmental Protection as well, and not be in default of other state assistance. At time of application, they would have to certify to the wage requirements as well. Similar to the lease grant, it would still be greater of $15 an hour, 120% of minimum wage requirements, and tipped employees would be only the 120% of minimum wage requirements. Nonprofits and commercial businesses would be eligible for this program as well. Some project eligibility requirements around this is, again, it would just be a reimbursement of an interior exterior building improvements and for specific purchases around or installing furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Home-based businesses can qualify for this, but only in regards to FF&E. We wouldn't allow any type of home improvements to be eligible under this program. Work has to be completed on or after March 9th, 2020. But no more than 2 years prior to the application date. And they would, the applicants are going to have to provide documentation that the work was completed through invoices, statements, payments, or canceled checks as well too. And again, the project costs have to be at least $5,000. And the applicant would be responsible for any type of permits or zoning approvals that may be needed in order to get the project completed to move forward. Projects over $50,000 are subjected to green building standards as well, related to any type of interior exterior lighting or mechanical work that can include an HVAC system. And if the applicant's leasing space and it's not incorporated in their lease that they would have permission to make these improvements, then we would need a specific permission from the landlord just through an email or a letter saying that you have that permission. In regards to someone who's using a contractor that has 4 or more employees, they would have to be, in order to meet affirmative action requirements, they have to fill out 2 forms, essentially. That would be part of their application. Next slide. So some requirements that are factored into the statute that we would have to basically incorporate into these programs are the wage requirements, as I highlighted previously. So that's again with certifying at application and during the compliance period of these grant agreements, the applicant is essentially saying that they would pay their employees the greater of $15 an hour or 120% minimum wage. Again, for tipped employees, it's just 120% of minimum wage. We would essentially do the compliance period annually. We would collect data through a WR30, a payroll report, or depending on the business setup, there could be other documentation we would look to support that information as well too. Also complying with green building standards, there would be essentially a form that you would have to work with your contractor through. And then it's ensuring that any type of lighting and mechanical improvements would fit that standard as well for green building. Affirmative action as well too, the contractor would essentially fill out 2 forms to be able to be part of the application and move forward as well too. For the commitments associated to this in the compliance period, the small business lease grant would be the minimum term of the lease, which would be 5 years. And then for the small business improvement grant, for any grant that's under 25,000, it's a 2-year compliance per the grant agreement. And for 25,000 and more, it would be a requirement of 4 years per the grant agreement as well too. So we also have the ability to also do additional pilots under this program, utilizing this fund. So with that, we will essentially be doing additional our micro business loan too, which offers attractive financing terms to micro businesses. The wage requirements would not be applicable for any of the loan programs per the statute. So this would be more towards operating expenses and costs, but it wouldn't have the wage requirements either. And then we would also be providing resources to micro business lenders to provide additional support to micro businesses too. So this would be, again, access to capital at very attractive terms, but we would look to our partners like our CDFIs, minority depository institutions, zone development corps, and EDCs, nonprofit lenders with that 10-year of minimum lending experience to be able to provide them funding. And then they can, in return, provide access to capital to businesses on the local level, but also provide technical assistance as well too. And the technical assistance essentially will allow the business owner to be able to access the capital more effectively. So if they have a ding on their credit report, they can use credit repair services, or if they need a business plan or provide projections, they can be able to utilize the technical assistance that these entities would offer. So I think that's the last slide, and I will kick it back over to Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, and Ty Cooper as well. This is such an exciting program. This is going to be a huge boost for New Jersey small businesses. This is really great information. You have obviously put a lot of thought and intentionality into drafting these rules. We are now intentionally creating space for engagement. So we're going to turn it over to the public. It's your turn to give us your input. We're hoping for a very engaging session. So prior to opening it for the public feedback, I just want to remind everyone of our policy. Again, please use that raise hand function, which you can find on my screen. It's at the bottom under the 3 dots that say more. And I will call on each person with their hand raised in the order that it was raised. We will unmute your microphone and then you can make your statement. In order to ensure, again, that everyone's voice can be heard, we're going to have a limit of 3 minutes to speak. You can see the 3-minute timer up here. We're going to ask that you keep your comments to matters pertaining, again, to the Economic Recovery Act and the Main Street Recovery Finance Program and the draft rules. Each member is going to have, the public is going to have 1 opportunity to provide comments. And if at the end, we still have additional time and somebody wants to provide additional comments, we're happy to provide that opportunity at that time. This is a listening session, and so we are asking our speakers to really address more any responses or clarifications from the rules that we were presenting earlier. And then we ask all speakers and members of the public to provide the remarks in a civil manner. So again, I'm going to call on those that have their hands raised. Once I call on you, we will unmute your microphone. Please share your input. If there are any folks who have dialed in, we'll give an opportunity for you to unmute yourself and provide verbal comments as well. And just a reminder, as you can see in the chat, that yes, this will be posted. So with that, I see we do have some attendees with their hands up. So the first one is Angela Reynolds. Please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I'm just wondering what the application dates, when they begin, and where we can, is there an application that we can review to get our documents together?
Yes, so I just will highlight the process. So we're just getting feedback around the rules and regulations right now, and then we have to go to board to get approval for the programs, so then they can be created and established. And then from that point, we will launch the applications. So similar to how we're doing these panels and outreach, we will be doing that around the application process as well too. But it would be on our website as well. We would also have a checklist provided for the applicants so they can understand and prepare ahead of time as well too. Just, because there's certain requirements for forms and we want to make sure everybody has that ahead of time. So yes, that's more to come essentially. This is just really step one. And then once we get after board, we'll be launching the actual 2 grants.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I see our next hand raised is Mr. Herman Lee. Please unmute yourself and make your comment. I think you're still muted. If you unmute.
Did I
There
do
we
it?
go. Yes, that's it.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for having me today. I'm really, really excited about this program. My question to you is in reference to the grant. Can you use this grant to start to build something from the ground up?
In regards to the improvement grant, is that what you're talking about? Or
Okay, so the thing is, I own Ceramic Dynamics and I was interested in actually building a garage with office space. Or does it have to be something that's leased?
so it's the grants are essentially like 2 different scenarios. So if you're looking to build something from ground up and add additional space, you can do that, but it's a reimbursement, right? So after it's built, then you would file an application to say, I've done this, you would provide the documentation, and then you're reimbursed 50% of your costs, and the maximum award would be $50,000.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you're looking to lease space, and then also for everyone who's listening, you can tap into both of these grants as well too. So you're eligible for the lease and the improvement. So if you lease space and you have to make improvements to that space, you can qualify for both grants. So it's really what's going to be the best fit for you as a business owner. If you want to lease, you can apply for the lease grant as well too, but that would be going into new space. It's available statewide. You would just identify where that location would be. And again, at approval, you get the 20% of your annual lease payments. Then 12 months later, you would get another grant for 20% of your annual lease payments.
Okay, thank you.
And you can be an early stage business. There's no time restriction around, you have to be operating for at least a certain period either.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for that. I see our next question is from the director in Flemington. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Let's see, hold on one sec. I think I can actually well, maybe I can't change my video, but it's Robin Lapidus. I am the executive director in the borough of Flemington, and for us, we do have a number of storefront retail properties that are actually less than 500 square feet. I know that sounds teeny tiny, but we do have several, and I just wonder if that's a possibility that you might be able to just go a tiny bit smaller in terms of square footage. That's just one point. The next question I have is, for us, a lot of our inability to match properties with businesses that are looking to lease or rent or even buy has to do with the condition of the buildings, that their electrical might not be up to scale, or the building needs many renovations. So can a landlord get a grant to improve their property to meet more tenants that are looking for spaces. And because I think it would be a lot for a tenant to take a space and take a space knowing that it needs electrical improvements or kitchen improvements or mold, and have to be able to do that work before moving in. So that's really the root of my question.
Yeah, that's a fully loaded statement. I do recommend too, and just like for all the participants that are on here today, to provide feedback if necessary too. So if the rules and are not incorporating something that you would like, please use that feedback that's on the website, that's going to be on the next slide essentially, to input that feedback. In regards to the landlord being eligible, it's going to really depend on how they're established and set up. This is really, the grants are intended for business owners to go into these spaces to be able to kind of support the business. And when it comes to the lease grant, that's an operating support. But if it's for the business owner to go in and make those additional improvements as well. But if you lease or own, you would be eligible, but it's not, the program intention was not really for landlords looking to make improvements. And again, it depends sometimes in these scenarios of how a landlord is set up as a real estate holding company, or if they're not a holding company. So it just created a more complex situation.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question though? Because Robin, what is the square footage in Flemington that?
We've had a couple of businesses that are, maybe 300 square feet. They may, it's a building that got subdivided. We had a Polish deli that was awesome, and she probably was in less than 300 square feet. Who really operated beautifully in a small space for to-go business. So we just have a few smaller spaces that are under 500.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So I think we're getting some really good engagement here. Really do appreciate the comments and the feedback. I see we have at least one more question right now, one more hand raised, but I encourage anyone else who does have questions to please take a moment to raise their hand. The next hand raised is Susan Hopkins. Susan, please make your comment.
Hi, this is Sue Hopkins, Hamilton Township, Atlantic County. We've got a bunch of small shops, very much like the other town that was mentioned earlier, less than 500 square feet in frontal space. My question would be, could 2 or 3 shops band together if they're less than the 500 requirement space frontage? Could 2 of them band together for a grant or a loan?
So that's gonna, definitely it creates a situation with who's going to be receiving the funds. So it's typically the entity that would be applying and the space that they're in, and it would create a very complex situation to be able to monitor compliance and employees associated to the space as well too. So that would not be something. And then even for the loans as well too, because there's personal guarantees established that would be tied to the lending. So it'd be hard to track and monitor those.
Okay, thank you for that. Before we go to our next question from those on the webinar, I did want to give just a brief opportunity in case there was anybody who had only called in and didn't have the ability to raise their hand to make a comment now. So if you are on a phone line and you called in and didn't have the opportunity, please unmute yourself now, and we'll take your comment, and I'll pause for a moment. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone on the phone line. So our next comment is from Sandra Rojas. Sandra, please make your comment. Please unmute
Yes,
yourself.
hi. Okay.
Hi.
Hi. Listen, I am in the NPP Columbian District in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and we are an urban enterprise zone. Now, do we apply as micro businesses or do we apply as small businesses? Because this is our, this is what's going on with the Latino community. And right here, we have 46 businesses right now. We all applied and it's only like 3 blocks long. Now, when we applied for this, we don't have a lot of employees. Most of us have like 1, maybe 2 employees. Are we still allowed to apply for this and for the full amount?
So there's not a different classification, whether you're micro or small, but you have to meet, essentially, if you would be a micro, depending upon your NAICS code, would define the requirements under SBA. So for the grants, it's an SBA established definition under the statute. However, for loans, it's for micro businesses. So it's the 10 full-time employees or less and less than 1.5 million. So it's really, it depends on what product that we would put out there and what you would pursue. So for the grants, though, it's again, SBA definition. So, and then it would define, the uses of what you're looking to do. If you only have 1 employee, though, you would be certifying at time of application that, okay, for these employees, I would be opting into paying these minimum wage requirements. But it's around the uses of it, right? If you're going into new space, you can apply to the small business lease grant. If you're making improvements or had to buy equipment, and you may have done that since March 9th of 2020, you would be eligible to get actually reimbursed for that. But just going forward, you would be committing to providing a more fair and equitable wage to your actual employees going forward. So it's a little bit, I think you may be talking about our COVID grants, which are more, the phases that we've had, which we're using federal dollars and really supporting for based upon number of employees, determined what bucket you essentially went into. These are completely separate. They're not relief, and this is not federal funding we're utilizing. This is a state appropriation. So there's no demonstration of need, a 25% impact, anything like that. So they're just different resources.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. And then I don't know if maybe one of our colleagues who are staffing the chat function and the area, if they could put in a link to more information perhaps about the COVID grants that Christina just mentioned, in case that people were interested in learning more about that. I do see we have 2 more hands up, and I'm going to actually go Robin and pause for a second on Robin, because we did say that we wanted to give everybody 1 opportunity first, and then we would go back for folks who had additional comments. So since Robin already spoke once, we're going to go to Miriam Sarhan. Miriam, please ask your question or make your statement.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. My name is Miriam. I have a family business in Atlantic County, and I had just a few clarifying questions which I could then use to give some feedback. My first question was, could someone who's applying be a sole proprietor of the business and not have any employees and still be eligible for
Yes.
the grant?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a yes, wonderful. And then the second part is, in terms of the improvements, is it only limited to the interior and exterior, or could it be things that are more foundational to the building? Like you guys mentioned the fixtures and furniture and things of that nature, and then you also mentioned HVAC and HVAC system. Is there anything beyond that, or is that where it's limited to?
That's pretty full encompassing. I don't know what you would think of, like, what's your example that didn't get incorporated into that?
Okay, I'm just thinking of if it could be something like that was mentioned earlier, if there's a plumbing issue, an electrical issue,
Yeah.
if there's a,
It's all the work and improvements that would have to be made under a renovation or improvement.
Okay, and that would be both for the person leasing and the business owner. Both would be able to apply to make those improvements.
Yep.
Okay, and then you also mentioned that one entity could also apply for both. They don't have to choose either one. If they're eligible, they could apply for both at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so at this time, I don't see any new hands raised, but Robin Lapidus in Flemington, I see you have another comment or question. Please go ahead, unmute and make your statement.
Thank you. I'm sorry to be the question asker, but I do want to ask about staffing. And the woman who just spoke before me's question was very helpful because we know that a lot of our small businesses have reduced their staff to some in some cases to almost none, and staffing has been impossible. So we're hoping that that changes soon. But my question is, so this can be if you already own an existing business and you're applying for a grant and the staffing needs to be addressed in some kind of affidavit, you are able to say that in the future you will pay people at the minimum wage rate if you haven't been doing it up until that point? Is that
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't expect people to be doing this up until this point. In some cases that may be applicable, but it's not going to be the majority, right? So at time of application, you're essentially saying going forward, you will be paying the employees these wages though. So in order to get, opt into the grant, you're essentially saying that you would opt into these as well too. And it would be identified in the grant agreement as well for going forward.
And is there a contingency that you have to staff up? Because I
No,
think we've had
no, we're
such
not
tremendous
requiring you.
staff shortages.
No, we're not
Okay.
requiring you to hire a certain amount of employees. We couldn't, require you to do anything like that. But we're just saying if you do staff up or hire additional people, or essentially, those employees would have to be paid this wage requirement under that.
That's great. Thank you.
I don't see any additional hands up at this time. I'll give you a moment in case there's any additional comments. But I do want to say, we really are deeply grateful for your continued engagement. As Ty mentioned at the beginning, this engagement makes our rules so much stronger, and getting this feedback, again, this is what we want. We want to hear from you. We're not here just for you to listen to us speak. So, we really do appreciate these comments. I would also recommend to folks, because I think I saw one question that came in through the Q&A about, more information on this program and others. Definitely definitely follow us on social media, because we put a lot of information out on our social media accounts as well. And you can go to our website always and get more information as well. So I think I see one more question, and it is from Rita. Rita, please unmute yourself. Rita, I think you have to unmute. There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, so this is Rita, and we own 2 learning centers in Flemington and Clinton. And we actually moved into a larger space during pandemic. And I was wondering if that would count. Like when you do the calculations for the square feet, would that larger space count?
So the addition of square feet is what you're saying?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it was over 500 square feet?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and you signed it, when did you sign it though? The actual lease?
So Abhishek is here, sorry.
So one we signed last year, another one we just signed like a couple of weeks ago. We have not yet, the lease is not yet effective. It'll be effective in probably sometime later in August.
So it's really, once we get the application live, just remember, they technically are eligible. It's just going to be around that 12-month timing. It would still have to be 12 months prior to your application date. So to be eligible.
Okay, yeah. So it's prior to the, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions or hands raised at this time. So I think we can move to the next slide. I want to thank everyone who has spoken, everyone who has put their comments in the chat. Again, this is exactly what we need to make this program the best it can be. Again, if you weren't able to participate today, you can go to our website. You're going to get, this will be posted there, and everyone, including those who did speak today, can put written feedback into our portal there, njeda.com/program-specific-feedback. Please forward this on to your colleagues, your friends, anyone else you know that is interested in this topic, and encourage them to do the same. Again, this only works because you are willing to engage on this level. And without that, we wouldn't be able to push forward with the rulemaking and launch of these programs in the way that we are. And so we really are grateful for that. And I just wanted to thank also our back office colleagues who helped bring this webinar to you as well. And so thanks to everybody. And this concludes today's session. I hope you have a great rest of the day.